At Utah Humanities, we are choosing to experience social distancing as a virtual campfire by staying connected, having conversations, sharing ideas, and just being human together. This conversation is with Willy Palomo from Utah Humanities. He is over our literary programs, and he has worked with Ashley Finley, with whom we also talk. She is a Utah poet and activist, and she shares with us her perspectives on why poetry is important for everyone, but specifically the influence it can have on our youth.
Thank you. Willy, you are the director for our Center for the Book at Utah Humanities. Welcome.
Hey, Deena. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And Ashley Finley, you are a local poet and activist. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's so great to see you both. I wish I could give you a big hug.
It's a virtual hug.
Seriously, yes. Willy, let's start with you. Why don't you talk about the type of work that you and your capacity at Utah Humanities and Ashley have done together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've known Ashley for a few years now through spoken word and poetry communities. So when I took up the role at Utah Humanities, it made sense for me to reach out to Ashley for helping to coach high school students in poetry and helping to get poetry performances in different high schools across the valley to try to grow, yes, the capacity of the organizations that are in these high schools and inspiring these students to write and to help them perform and things like that. So I've been reaching out to Ashley and been like, let's do this. And then Ashley's been a very helpful and exciting hand to kind of have help out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what a great age to kind of engage with poetry.
Oh yeah.
The channel.
The students have a lot to say.
Yes.
They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
Ashley,
my favorite.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's my favorite age group to work with, honestly.
Mm-hmm. So tell us what you've done, Ashley.
So currently, before all of this, I was working with East High and just cultivating their poetry club. That school, we kind of had students come in and out, but the students who are there and are writing have been so amazing. I feel like sometimes I even am learning things from them,
Mm-hmm.
and inspired by them, more so than the other way around, because it's so illuminating to see those kids say, I have a voice and there's something that I need to say, and, let me maybe slap a few metaphors on that and say it, in a poetry form. So that's what I've been working on mainly. And then also on the high school slam circuit, poetry slam circuit, I've been kind of helping out there where I can as well. Yeah.
That's so great. I mean, poetry slam is kind of a fun outlet, I think, too, and a very active, medium for saying some important things that
right.
that need to get out there. So Ashley, why would you say it's important for teenagers, young adults to engage with poetry? What do you think it does for them?
Well, on one hand, I think that, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to kind of broaden horizons because, there's, especially this age group, they're learning poetry in school, right? And they're learning the classics and they're learning iambic pentameter and like what a stanza is. And that's all beautiful and really important. But I think the capacity in which I like to teach poetry to the schools is a lot more free verse and a lot more without as much structure, and so I think it's really important to say, this structure is a classic structure. It's beautiful, we know it, and it has a lot of use, but also If there's some things that you just want to say and you want to use your voice in the most authentic way, like, here's another way to do that. And that's one thing I really love about poetry, is that it's so versatile. It can rhyme, it cannot rhyme, you can have cadence, you cannot have cadence, you know, you can have stanzas, it could just be one big page of ongoing poetry or a list, you know. And so it gives students, young adults, whoever, a really good outlet to explore their feelings and explore their voice in many different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're not limited to the structure, right? It can just be a platform, a validating platform for them to say what they need to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right in that. Just say what you need to say, get it on page. That's what I always start with. Just put it on the page. And then if there's something else that you want to work through from there, we can do that. But my main concern is that you're putting that on the page. You're putting yourself on the page. And I think we've seen it, right? In like this age group, poetry it's like becoming so popular. And it's becoming viral, almost, to use the word that the kids would say. And I think that's why, because in this medium, young adults, you know, kids, teenagers, students have found their voice, and have found that, like, not only do they have a voice, but there are other people who are willing to listen to that voice, or willing to read that voice and resonate with it.
Kind of along those same threads, one of the most beautiful things just about literature in general is the conversations that you're able to start with it. And I think it's that poetry gives a lot of these students one of the few mediums they have to control the conversation and have the conversation that they even want to have. And there's not a lot of spaces like that in public education frequently for students to, you know, dictate the terms of the conversation and what they think is most important. So that's been one of the most, like, beautiful things for me, watching these students kind of grow and explore, is that, you know, you give them a few prompts and you give them the freedom to explore what they need to. And it's all the conversations that they think is most pressing and that they feel like they need to be emphasizing.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
I mean, it sounds so life-changing, especially in the moment, for a teenager to be able to control the narrative, the conversation, to have a voice. And in the moment, that can feel very empowering and help them feel powerful. What would you guys say then would be some of the long-term effects of having that experience as a teenager, to feel like maybe going through life you haven't had a voice, or you haven't controlled the conversation, to suddenly feeling like you do have a medium and a platform for doing just that? What would you guys see, you know, the results of those experiences being?
I think that the results would be, we end up with a generation that is much more emotionally intelligent, much more active in the world. You know what I mean? Like, they understand that they have a voice and they have a place in this world, that they belong and that they are important, right? And so they move through life. They move through life with that as the basis, you know? I think that just, like, allowing students to have that freedom to express themselves, and, like Willy said, kind of, you know, bring like to the front the conversations that are important to them, means that we get a generation of students who don't stay silent about injustice, right? Who don't stay silent about about violence and wrongdoing and all of those things that, you know, kind of perpetuate through the world. We have a generation that stands up and says, you know, if I'm valued, then I know that these people are valued too. And so I won't stand for the devaluing of these people, and their voice and their experiences.
Yeah. And I've seen Poetry Slam actually inspire and kind of give people the toolkit that they've needed to do like really cool work later on in their life. So I know that in Indiana, for example, the Indiana Undocumented Youth Alliance, a lot of the young women who are leading that, which is now a nonprofit and does a lot of great work throughout Indiana supporting immigrant communities, they started finding their voice in Poetry Slam. I know that Chanel Miller, who wrote the book Know My Name, she's Brock Turner's victim. She was able to write that incredible statement partly because during high school she had these experiences where she was engaging in poetry and exploring her voice and growing really comfortable and like using the tools to make strong language and to be able to like embody her experience. So that was one of the striking things when I was reading her book, that she has this whole little section just about like the impact Poetry Slam kind of had on her, which is amazing that there's people out there who have already been changing the world and, you know, leading some of the most important conversations in our nation, who got their start doing Poetry Slam and just being able to explore their voices at a young age.
Phenomenal. And it, you know, it reminds me of something that Josh, who we work with, Willy, Josh, who runs our high school Clemente programs, a year-long course in the humanities. He talks about having the Clemente students write themselves to an idea. And I love the concept, because sometimes when you start writing and you don't have maybe fully formed ideas or concepts or a way of expressing what, maybe you don't even know what you are trying to express really, but you've got something that you want to get out. I think the process of writing, you know, poetry or whatever can give you an opportunity to crystallize something you want to say and can lead you to an idea, like you just said, Willy, can change the world, you know, which is what we believe the humanities can do, right? I mean, it can empower people and improve communities literally in ways that sometimes you don't see for a while. So I appreciate that, because I think what you guys are doing now with the youth needs to have, you know, some sort of outcome that we all hope for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, creative expression in and of itself is great. And it can also lead to things that, you know, are amazing and sometimes unexpected.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So we're talking, I mean, you know, in the humanities too, and it's not our only focus, but we do talk about classics, like you just mentioned, Ashley, classic, you know, poetry structure and learning some of those foundational things. So reading the classics, I think, is always a good exercise, intellectually and emotionally. But what would you say are some of the reasons you would encourage people to read modern poetry and get to know modern poets?
I think one reason, or the most personal reason to me, is right, because there's a certain familiarity there, right? I do love a lot of older poetry, classic poetry, you know, but reading modern poets or listening to modern poets is so powerful, because it reminds me that at this moment, there is someone who understands what I am going through at this moment, you know? Yeah. And then I think that a lot of the conversations that are happening are really important in terms of, you know, like identity. Like that's a conversation that's on the forefront of, you know, everybody's mind. Like, what is my identity in whatever way, you know, I identify? Like, what is the intersectionality in me? And I think that right now we're seeing a lot of poets write and talk about that, talk about what it means to be, you know, a queer person of color, talk about what it means to be undocumented, talk about what it means to be first generation. You know what I mean? Like all of these really important conversations are happening right now. And they're at the forefront of everybody's mind, TV screens, phone screens, whatever. And so I think that it's incredibly important to kind of stay up to date, and you see things, you know, happening on the news cycle constantly. And so being able to see what's going on in the news and then read or listen to a poem from a person that is experiencing that thing right now is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it connects you to the moments, right, in your life that we're all experiencing.
Yeah.
Willy, anything? I do have one more question, but I'm curious if you have anything to add to that.
The reason I would read a lot of modern poetry is just because it's fun. It helps you process. There's a lot of poets out there that are just tackling any topic under the sun. So there's a poetry out there for everyone, and it's just a matter of like finding the stuff that really like, you know, hits you in the right spot. But the top reasons that I would read it, like, you know, there's poetry can be really funny, and you can just end up like laughing for minutes on end, as well as like, you know, gaining insights on life and stuff like that. So I feel like there's a ton of reasons to read poetry, but one of the ones I'd want to emphasize right now is just that it's also very enjoyable and entertaining.
Yeah. Going off of that, there's actually, I just wanted to kind of, this is not a plug or anything, but just going off of like any topic under the sun, there's a poetry journal dedicated completely to Taco Bell poetry. So if you're someone who's like incredibly interested in Taco Bell or chalupas or whatever, you know, there's even a journal for that where you can read collections of poems. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's hilarious. Honestly, we all need something like that right now too. I mean, humor can really heal.
Yes.
And one thing, because I'm not funny at all. I mean, I have my moments, but I'm just not a funny person. And so I really appreciate people that can find a truly I would never have thought of writing about Taco Bell, for example.
Right.
I just really appreciate people who do. I mean, who would have thought of that? But just I think humor can be really healing. And so
yeah,
I don't look at it as a plug. I'm going to look it up right now and read all the Taco Bell poetry.
Yes, it's amazing.
I mean, humor is one way. How do you guys think that, you know, something that we all need on an ongoing basis, but certainly in strange, kind of stressful times like this, how do you think poetry can unite communities and people and create a sense of solidarity?
I think the power is just in those two ends of the spectrum, right? Like the writing and the listening or the reading, you know. I think that poetry, while it can be funny, even if it is funny, it can be vulnerable. You know what I mean? And I think that allowing space for your own vulnerability, for a writer's own vulnerability, and then for a reader's or audience members' own vulnerability, there's no choice. There's no choice but there to be a sense of solidarity, in my opinion, or a sense of connection. You know, just me being able to, you know, hear a poet, like when I think of my students, you know, like when just me being able to sit there and listen to them talk about these really important things and have space for that, and then for them to hold space for me, you know, as they read and share, there's a connection there that I think is, you know, it's invaluable. And it's also inherent. I don't think, you know, I'm not listening to my students read these things and not feeling like, wow, like that is something that I need, you know, to really take in and process. You know what I mean? And so I think that just that relationship inherently builds a sense of solidarity and connection and community amongst people from all different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges of this moment is, like, for me, one of the most beautiful things about poetry is like being able to share in that room with people in a very intimate environment and being able to share that space with each other. And of course, like, we can't do that now. And I think one of the challenges, but also advantages about the situation we're in, is that I think poetry now, yes, demands more of people. Like, if you want to be able to create that space and share in those intimate moments, you have to be like willing to go to a page and process. You have to be willing to like sit through a Zoom thing maybe, or like reach and access these art forms through other ways. And we can all still be sharing that experience even though we're not close to one another, but it's just going to take a little bit more the audience side. And because it does, there's also a greater reward. So I think that's one of the challenges, but also kind of boons of like the situation we're in, is that people are going to need to learn how to engage with things on a deeper level if they want to be able to, if they want to, you know, have that same powerful experience.
Yeah, I like that. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So Ashley, what maybe we can wrap up with a final question. I want to respect your time today. I know Zoom is not the easiest way to have a conversation.
I'm getting more used to it.
Yeah, aren't we all? We're Zoom experts.
Yeah, pretty soon we're going to be able to teach workshops on Zoom.
Yeah, so true. You know, with the current definition of what is and isn't essential in our society, which businesses are considered essential, what would you say is the essential role of the humanities in general during, you know, tough times like these, or any time, but certainly, you know, during challenging times when they might seem optional or expendable? What role do you think they have as essential?
Well, yeah, I would like to first say that they are not optional or expendable. I think that they're medicine. The humanities are medicine for us. And that comes in so many different ways, right? That comes with uplifting our spirits. That comes with creating a place to have candid conversations. That comes with you know, confronting hard things and moving through those things, you know, but also, it also comes in a very practical sense, right? When we talk about, like certain like serotonin levels in our bodies or development in our brain, you know what I mean? Or the reduction of blood pressure. Like, these are all things that, like, the humanities have been proven to have a positive effect on. And so in this time, especially this time or any time where there's just like this global sense of stress and anxiety and fear and desperation, I think that this medicine is absolutely essential. And I mean, just to put it, right, we're all stuck in our living rooms all day, you know, most of us are, at least, and those who can afford to be, you know, are stuck in our living rooms all day with what are we going to do? You know, we're going to read poetry, we're going to read literature, we're going to listen to our favorite music, you know, we're going to hop online and watch operas. You know what I mean? It's just incredibly important and essential that we do not lose access to these resources and to this medicine.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Really, that is a very poignant, applicable way to describe the humanities right now. I really couldn't think of a better way to frame the effect that the humanities can have on humanity, on all of us at this kind of challenging time.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Willy, any final thoughts from you before we wrap up?
The thought I had about your final question was, yes, that I saw that Paisley Rechtel wrote an opinion article for the Salt Lake Tribune talking about sort of what the implications are when you use a term like Chinese virus and how that impacts Americans and the history beyond the history of looking at Chinese Americans in particular as like an infection. And I think work like that is deeply applicable to like the pandemic that we're seeing right now, and that close attention to language and the, bringing out stories that are sometimes suppressed within the like larger American imagination. I think that what I saw Paisley do, who's our poet laureate, is a great example of like the crucial role that humanities have right now in making sure that everybody is being seen as human and that we are not forgetting or suppressing people's stories.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh no, that's all. Amazing. Great. Thank you. Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, you guys, thanks so much for the conversation today. I really appreciate all of your insight and just the personal aspect of your poetic lives that you were willing to share with us.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you both. Thank you.
And thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Willy. Thank you. I appreciate you for having me and for also allowing me a space to do this work. I'm grateful.
Well, it's essential, and I appreciate you both. So thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.